Oh, I'd like to thank Kara. Let's give Kara a hand of applause. She's a new staff person within Bioneers. There is a commitment with the advice and direction of the Native people on the board of directors of Bioneers, as well as support from the sponsoring partnerships of this Indigenous Forum, the Cultural Conservatory Project, and the Indigenous Environmental Network, that we need a Native face. We need Native people working within Bioneers to make all this possible. So, thank you. I didn't know I wrote all that. I forgot I wrote all that. Yat Greetings, Yat Hamitakia Pi. It's good to see you. It's good to be here. It's really an important topic that we're talking about, and I want to try to use every second, every moment to express what I have to say. And I'd like to thank the two previous presentations, and it was really a very appropriate introduction of their presentations leading to what I have to say. And before I start, I wanted to sing this song, so if everyone can rise. You can have a seat. Chunde Washtea na prechi zapido. The good heart, I give every one of you a handshake. The Bethlejini, actually, the Kota Oyate Basha Shichin. Nehun Hungaki, the Ne, Navajo, Farmington, New Mexico. Hechia Tahahito. Tuwahi Mitkawa, Owase, Chanshayape Otonweta, Lower Sioux, Dakota Reservation, Tahahipito. So that's who I am. That's how I relate to myself. That's how I relate to my family. That's how I relate to my community. That's how I relate to my nations. Our Diné Navajo Nation. It's my mother's people. And I have an invisible umbilical cord, you can say, that I wear with me all the time. It's my evidence of who I am. And I take that no matter where I go. And there's nothing that I can do about that. That's my identification. That cord that comes out from that evidence that all of you have. I hope every one of you have that. If whether you have an innie or an outer. Okay? If you don't have that evidence, then I welcome you, my relatives from the Star Nation. And also take into consideration my homeland and my other relatives are Dakota people, the Bdewa-Kantawa, the people of the sacred lakes, the eastern Dakotas, and coming from the land of the woodland, the floral. So I carry my tobacco with me everywhere I go. And there's a part of me that can talk politics. There's a part of me that can be part of a direct action, raising a ruckus with a multinational corporation or a government that's not doing what they're supposed to do. But there's a spiritual foundation in everything that we do, everything that I do. The work of an Indigenous Environmental Network has a spiritual foundation. And there's nothing that we can do about that, because that was part of a free will, taking direction from elders, taking direction from ceremonies that we had, and taking direction not only from the older generation, but the youth in 1990, who are no longer youth, but they have children now, and they're in their 30s. Taking direction from all of them, that if we're going to make a change in the restoration of our Inamaka, Kunshimaka, Grandmother Earth, Mother Earth, that is going to require a movement that we have never seen before, a movement that we did not have a model to express, a movement within my generation that were part of that Elvis Presley generation, the Beatles generation, Vietnam, part of that generation where everything was transforming even at that time. Free love, a lot of everything going on, war, peace. But also it's a time in Indian country, and I rarely use that word Indian country, because part of our transformation and restoration of who we are is to try to do away with language that was part of a marginalization of who we are, our identity. So even in those times coming out of the 50s and the 60s, going into the 70s, and all those things that were going on, there was a movement in Indian education. And my brother here, Dan Wildcat, and many others became educators, using that mind, the beauty of our mind, the intellectual capacities that we all have, Indigenous peoples, but trying to break away from those bondages that were created by colonization to diminish who we are, that we're not smart, that we're pagans, that we're infidels, that we have no civilization, that we're less than. And that was a conditioning so much that one time, as I got older, as I got to understand all these different things that have happened to our people, I was talking to a friend of mine, Emmett Eastman, who's a long-distance runner. Some of you may have met him. He runs all over the world. He's from Sisseton, South Dakota. He's Dakota. And I was talking to him. He said it was only after he started to run, and he started to run when he was in his 40s, late 40s. He already had his education from the university to be a teacher, master's degree. But it wasn't until he began to run on Mother Earth, he said, that he gained confidence in himself. And that made me think, how is it that we have a whole population of people that we have dealing with the issue that I don't have confidence in myself, that affects my self-esteem, that affects who I am, that maybe makes me angry, not only against a population of people who immigrated here, but even anger towards myself. If we can try to understand that history, that brief moment of who we are as Indigenous peoples, and to understand the historical trauma on many levels, sexual abuse, physical abuse of our children in residential schools, boarding schools, some church funded, on a tremendous level. Even the statistics in Canada isn't just 1 out of 10 of the children in those residential schools, but as high as 6 out of 10 children. Where is their spirit? After that trauma, the spirit took off. That emptiness as Indigenous peoples. So I wanted to talk about this topic because it's a deep discussion. When we have a society of people and humanity now looking towards solutions and answers from Indigenous peoples. How precious our traditional knowledge is now. And it took time. It took time for Indigenous Environmental Network to step forward in this circle of our brothers and sisters of the Bioneers circle. We thought about it, we prayed on it for a number of years. Finally decided to take part, standing with our sister, Dr. Melissa Nelson, with the Cultural Conservatory project. Allowed us to take fruition on what we see here. And there's a lot of different words I wanted to share with you. Some of you use that word now, mitakiawasi. We say it with the W, our Lakota L speaking, they say it with the Y, mitakia oyasi. There's even differences within the dialects of our peoples. What does that mean? All my relations. Importance of relationship. When we're restoring the lifeways of Maka, our Mother Earth, our grandmother Earth. Restoration of Mother Earth. I appreciate the hard work of our brother here from Southern California. It's very difficult, very frustrating, this work. Restoration, protection, conservation of cultural areas, cultural lands, cultural areas. It's a learning experience, but it surrounds relationship building. Restoration, restorative justice with Mother Earth. Restorative justice within ourselves in that long process. I always tell our young generation, I said, your older generation, it's a miracle that we're even able to stand here and talk about who we are and appreciate that miracle. We have been on a long journey as Indigenous peoples of this as our homeland. It's a miracle that we even have elders that can come up and speak in their own language. The revitalization of our language is very important. In the north, many of our people have lost that language, again from that historical trauma, residential schools. But that doesn't make them any less than who they are. But now we have a society looking to that population, our peoples, for answers and solutions. Why I mention these things and why I sing that song, because that's a song that my teacher, Pitaha Yuhamani, Pete Katcha Sr., taught me that. Not only that song, but many other songs. Of casting out your prayer to that far distant place in hopes that the Great Spirit will respond, will hear that prayer. And it's about restoration of the lifeways of Maka, our Mother Earth. It leaves more questions of how do we restore our relationship to the sacredness of Mother Earth. That's a concept that I use very often when I talk to people. They say, what do you do? I can say, yeah, I'm the executive director of the Indigenous Environmental Network. It's an Indigenous people's organization, nonprofit, blah, blah, blah. And we got very experienced organizers who are native and they know their identity. They can go into a community and help work with the community. Our constituency that we work with are communities on the front line of resistance against some of the largest multinational corporations in the world. So the words are very important. And I wanted to talk more about the spiritual realm of this restoring life ways of Mother Earth and the importance of our young generation and the work that we all have done, Melissa, myself, the tribes, the universities, the people in Hawaii, all over. And one of those that I'm proud to lift up is our youth right out here, the 7th Native American generation. Because they reflect everything that we are talking about. They're the next generation. They're the next generation. They're going to take it to another level. Even power from the womb, they are understanding this. And one of the other magazines says urban res. Urban res. I don't know if you know that 55% of our Native people here in the United States live off reservation. And there's a whole history of how that happened, how that came to be. The federal initiatives of relocation, which was a policy, a one-way ticket. Now we have third generation now in the urban areas. And I look at it in the way that that's our children, that's my aunties, that's my brothers and my uncles. When we talk about our relationship to the sacredness of Mother Earth, it's an important concept. In the meeting that we had right over here before this meeting started, Chief Oren Lyon said something that we have also been thinking about. How do you even begin as a goal to educate 7 billion people of the world to embrace a concept of understanding Mother Earth is life and understand that there are natural laws, that Mother Earth has laws. That's what we're talking about. And it's our responsibility as two-legged people, as human beings, to respect and honor Mother Earth's laws. When I say, Kunshi Maka Wichoni Maku, Mother Earth gives me life. How does Mother Earth give me life? When that's something that's expressed ever since even before you were born, before as a baby you were brought into this world. Mother Earth gives me life. And everything that means, again, that umbilical cord, that evidence of your connection to Mother Earth. And how do we break out of these, like a jail, a prison, a matrix that has stole that reality from us? And when I say us in this case, it's everyone, humanity. When I went with the delegation of indigenous peoples from the north, of elders and youth, going to Rio plus 20 years after the Earth Summit in 1992, and standing with our brothers and sisters of the South, and some of them are here. It was confusing, and it brought up old emotions when the agenda of the World Bank, the financial institutions, the multinational corporations, the pharmaceutical corporations, the seed corporation, the petroleum corporation, the chemical corporation, and universities who do research, and the governments, industrialized governments, the European Union, United States, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, the umbrella groups. The oligarchies, the Koch brothers, but they weren't there. But their attorneys, I'm sure, were. Moving an agenda called green economy, woven into those, as you peel away the disguises and the mask, it's about privatization of nature. That's nothing new to us, because we took that into ceremony already a long time ago. They said that they're going to be doing this. I remember a long time ago, when I was younger, in my AIM days, in the 70s, Philip Deere in Oklahoma at these elder youth gatherings said, someday you're going to pay for air. You're going to have to pay for water. And now I'm getting into that age where I'm the elder now. And I remember what Philip Deere said and many others. And here we are paying for water now. I go to the World Water Forum. I talk to our people back home in the Great Lakes. I talk to other people in the British Columbia area. I talk to people in the Southwest. We're concerned about water, the aquifers, especially the fossil aquifers that don't replenish themselves. We're running out of water. And now there's a lot of companies that own the subsurface rights. When we stood with the Mojave people on stopping the siting of a radioactive waste dump, the Chimawave, Colorado River Indian tribe, the Kokopah, the Kutsan. We found out that there's corporations already that have leased and already all those sections of land, and it has to do with subsurface rights to water. So how do we change this? Bioneers is engaging in a lot of solutions on how do we change this mindset. How do we restore the lifeways of Maka when we have a society that has been developed to where even the people of the world, civil society, don't have a voice? So back home, when we were trying to organize around against the free trade agreement, we found that we had some potential allies in North Dakota with the farmers. But we had to kind of peel away racism because we distrusted each other. So we had to find new tools to break down those isms that keep us divided. When we organized at the third ministerial meeting of the WTO in Seattle, how many were in Seattle at the third ministerial? Not many of you. Some of you maybe weren't born yet, or were still in elementary school. But when we went up there, there was a convergence of many different sectors. We challenged each other to break out of our silos, that this is an issue that concerns all of us and the future of the world. And we started to come together, the different affinity groups, the different sectors. We marched in from different streets in Seattle. Even the indigenous peoples, we had to fight to have a place in the environmental circle. That was strange. This was the original homeland, Chief Seattle and many other tribes. And we had to fight to be at the front because we are the original peoples. But we worked it out with our friends, the Enviros. But we were there and there was a convergence. It's one point here. But after that, it was interesting. The corporations, the consultants, the media sectors, the consultants, on how do you message this, they came down. And whatever positive abilities and strengths that we had coming out of the battle in Seattle, they started to fragment us all again. Not only here, but worldwide. So when I said that We are part of a movement on how do we participate in a new paradigm that is needed, that reminds people and brings human beings back to the reality of understanding what your relationship is to the sacredness of Mother Earth. If you don't have that foundation, then whatever is created may end up being back into the same problem that we're in. And it has to understand the power systems, that the true power is in the natural laws of Mother Earth. These natural laws that we cannot change. Indigenous people understood that. Many of the indigenous people understand we're not in the position to change the natural laws that have been established. It's not open for discussion. That's why many of us oppose different technology solutions. Even nanotechnology is in question, and biomimicry. We're not quite evolved as human beings. Even when we got involved in the UN Biological Convention on Biological Diversity, we had to talk about biopiracy, genetically modified organisms. And to this day, even though we said there needs to be safety protocols, there's no safety protocols to this day that help guide a society that is creating genetically modified organisms. Worries me. Seriously worries me. So I was thinking, what do I have to talk about in my brief minutes? And I don't know how many minutes I have left. But I wanted to go back to those roots that guide me. And I didn't want to talk about politics or organizing a direct action. Those are strategies and different tactics that we use, regulation, policy changes. But we are at a very critical moment. Yes, we are. I like to tell you we are not in a critical moment. We are in a critical moment. We have intentionally been meeting with spiritual leaders throughout the world. Different moments in time, meeting with the Khoisan people in South Africa at the cradle of mankind. Very sacred place. Many different places, meeting with the Kogi people and their message as the older brothers to the younger brothers. And that gravitated to me. The ones who are here, Dan, Melissa, Kara, many others who are indigenous to this land, we are your older brothers, we are your older sisters, and whether you were forced here, our free will, you immigrated here, or descendants, we are still your older brothers and older sisters, and there's nothing that you can do about that. When I go to Europe and I go down the Rhine River, I have my respects. I am a younger brother over there. When I go to Africa, the continent, I'm a younger brother. I humble myself. But I have a friend that I want to share a brief story real quick. Walter Prissett. He passed away, Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, from Wisconsin, Red Cliff. And he's a writer. He used to be on the radio shows. He runs his own radio station. Walt Prissett, a deep thinker, critical thinker. He probably, if he went that route, he would have had a PhD and been a professor in a university. He was a deep thinker. We were the house band at one year in the 90s at the Land, Air, and Water Conference in Oregon, law conference. I used to be called upon to go there and be a speaker, and he was too. Winona LaDue, John Trudell, I think still is the house band. Mililani Trask, been a speaker up there, maybe some of you. That was in the 90s for me. Walt Prissett was a speaker. I finished my presentation. I went to a lecture hall. It was 350 people, and he was laying on the table with the microphone. Some of you know Walker said, that's the way he is. Then he got up, then he says, all of you, he said, I'm tired. I am tired. I cannot do it anymore. But I adopt all of you. You are Native American now. And I was in the doorway, and I said, oh no. Walker said, what did you do? Now they're going to want treaty rights. But his point was that I make the remark that we are the older brothers and older sisters. I come to understand what he said because I walked in Europe. I did the grassroots route. Even if you take the train route, they have different police come in as you leave different countries. But there's areas of Europe where people have lived there not 150 years, 300 years. They have lived there thousands of years. And they have some kind of relationship to the land that they will march and stop the siting of a nuclear waste facility. Why is it in this country now when I don't think we're going to do that? A few of us. But they have some kind of relationship to that land. So he was saying, the people who are the younger brothers and younger sisters need to take responsibility. This is your land now. This is your land now. I don't think you're going to move away. And how do we develop working relationship? Relationship began around restoring the lifeways of Maka. What are the protocols for doing that? And it is frustrating for some people who have questions about how to quantify landscapes. Quantify, when I got involved in environmental justice issues, we had to deal with standards and regulations built upon risk assessments, and I was looking at quantifications and assumptions on risk assessment. Policies are developed upon assumptions. Introduction of chemicals. But I started talking to risk assessors because they're saying, I hear you, I listen to you, you're saying this is sacred, or this San Francisco peak is sacred. It's a landscape, they say. It's a resource. Help me to understand how we can quantify that so I can use my calculator. I'm just using an analogy of a calculator. I know we progressed our slide rule, okay? We've gone way beyond that. But what are the models for quantification of sacred and spiritual values? With direction from my elders, I used to go into the EPA, Department of Energy, with that question. And I don't think they have a model developed yet to quantify spiritual values. How do we even do that? And what are the parameters and the protocols for making decisions around whatever governance structure you have? Whether you're creating your own intentional community, or whether you're participating in an existing county or city where you have to make a decision. What are the protocols for respecting the laws of Mother Earth, or the rights of Mother Earth, which is responsibilities that we have? That's our concepts. How do you do that as a society in your restoration and coming back to who you are in defining your relationship to the sacredness of Mother Earth and Father Sky? It's part of the creation, and not participating in manipulation of sacred, of creation. So those are some questions I have. I wish I can give you key 7 principles that will guide you. I'll leave that up to Dr. Dan Wildcat and his next book that he will write. It's good to see a brother of mine from way back, Frank Sanchez. We haven't seen each other since the 80s. But yes, we do have solutions. They come in our ceremonies. And there's protocols on how you acquire that knowledge. Protocols. Just wait, if I go to Tibet and I go into the temples, there's protocols. I can say, what does that mean? They'll look at me and, oh, there's protocols. So we are in a restoration process as a population, as humanity, coming back to understand our relationship to Mother Earth. That's why we are taking part in this movement on Rights to Mother Earth movement. It was presented in Cochabamba and came out in the outcome documents. We are looking at this, how do we incorporate precautionary principle in every level of decision making? How do we incorporate the 7-generation principle? That's really what we have. How do we become guardians? Every one of you are guardians and have responsibility as caretakers. Don't just leave it on us. All the Indians got that covered. Look at the difficult, just being a guardian of the areas that have significant cultural and spiritual significance to us. How do we protect that? And get out of a battle mode all the time? How do we get out of that warrior mode all the time? That's a lot of times we are in that warrior mode. We talk about peace. How do we have peace with water? The water ceremony. How do we bring out the peace in that? But there's another aspects of water as well. Look at the Grand Canyon. Over millions of years, that water has forged into the rock. It's powerful. What do we leave in forging a path to a better world, making a better America, making a better Turtle Island, making a better world possible? How do we break out of our silos? How do we become guardians and caretakers of Mother Earth, respecting the laws of Mother Earth? How do we work together between the older brothers and older sisters? Those are questions that we have to continue to work on. The word resiliency, I had to break that down into two languages, Navajo and Dene. I asked resiliency. But for us, for me, resiliency to come out of really dark areas of coping, having to cope with who we are, what I started with. Internalized oppression, that's another little symptom of colonization, where we have internalized the way of the oppressor as oppressed people, and to break out of that. It's like going through deep therapy and coming out whole on the other end. How do we cope and build resiliency when you still got anger, resentments, where your self-esteem is still tested out? And now our younger brothers are going resiliency route. They're healthy. They have good breathing methods. They're at peace with themselves. And we're still in turmoil. The First Nation people are still struggling. But how was that situation? And how do we have compassion? So with that, that's the few words I wanted to share around restoring Lifeways of Maka. Thank you.